Can't help smiling from ear to ear. Okay. My guest today is a content creator, podcaster, author, and mother who is still trying to figure out the whole adulting thing. She's made a living out of documenting her failures and successes as a 40-year-old woman, a mother, and a wife across various social media platforms. Her mission in life is to make as many women as possible feel seen and to make them realise that they are never ever the only one. She's wonderfully honest, very relatable, and willing to say all the things the rest of us hide away. In doing so, manages to make us all feel a little bit better about our perfectly messy lives. I have had the fortune of meeting her in real life, and she's just as brilliant in real life as she is on whatever media platform you might find her on. More recently, or should I say, and this is where a huge congratulations comes in, more recently, or should I say, over the last 1,000 days, she has shared her sobriety journey, which is incredible. A little bit about your perimenopause, lots about fitness and more. It is a great, great honour for me to introduce someone I'd like to call my friend, Kat Sims. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. Of course we're friends. And you've reminded me I do need to update that bio because I am no longer 40, unfortunately. I'm now 43.
Oh, I love that. 43. I know, but you don't look a day over 40.
It depends on the day, to be fair. How are you, darling?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm really excited for this because I have followed you for a long time on Instagram and, we've connected, we've met in real life. And as I said there in the bio, I think that you are so relatable because you break down those often taboo subjects that a lot of us are afraid to tap into. And we will come to that. But I think first and foremost, let's go a little bit further back because I like people to know, a bit about my guests sort of before they were. So what were you doing? And tell us a little bit about your life before sort of being a social media wizard and your life before Instagram and TikTok.
Do you know, when I saw this question, because obviously you're very good and you sent some of the questions ahead of time, I realised I don't think anybody's really asked me that question before. And in turn, I don't think I've spent enough time thinking about it, which is because it's very easy to think that this is how my life has always been. But actually, doing what I do now and having a kind of platform, I did a ton of stuff that I'm actually really proud of that I sort of forget about. I started off working in the fashion industry. If you didn't know I was ADHD, you will by the time I've given you my CV. So I started off working in the fashion agency as a buyer, and then I thought, I don't want to do this anymore. So I went off to do a ski season, and then I thought, I'll do another ski season. And then my dad said, you need to get a proper job. So I came back and I thought, I know, I'll teach, because I did an English literature degree, so that's what we all end up doing. So then I became a teacher for 5 years. I taught secondary English. And then I was living with my husband at this time, who was a touring musician. He was earning 3 times as much money and working 3 times as little. That doesn't make sense, but you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I thought, I know, I want to work in music. So I thought, I'll just sack off my really secure job with a great pension, and I'll go and work in music, even though I don't have a musical bone in my body. But I did. I ended up touring with Ray Davies from the Kinks for 5 years, and did the Saturdays and various other little bits and pieces. And I sort of really love that part of my life because it was so varied and it was so different, and that ability to just jump from thing to thing without any fear or worry, I took that completely for granted. But I'm really glad I got that opportunity. And so I was just, before this all kicked off, I was just I would say I hadn't really figured out what I was doing, but I was having a lot of fun trying to. But there was always this feeling in me that because I hadn't found the thing, that I was sort of a jack of all trades and master of none, that I was not really fulfilling my potential, that I hadn't really stuck with anything. And that really did affect my confidence. And it's something that I've learned to accept, A, as part of the way my brain works, but also as part of the process to getting to where I am today.
Yeah. Growing up, I mean, let's just step back and then we will move forward because I want to. We do come on to ADHD because I know that's something else we have in common. Did you know back then that if we look at the traits of ADHD kind of through your own schooling life, you've become a teacher, do the pieces of the puzzle kind of add up now? Like when I think about my ADHD and it's like you are noisy, you interrupt, you're attention seeking, although actually a lot of the time you're not necessarily that confident. Like that was always my narrative. Was that your narrative as well? Kind of, yeah, in your early years.
100%.
Yeah.
Chatterbox, always interrupting. I did that thing that ADHDers do that used to get me really into trouble with my friends, especially in secondary school, when they talk about something, I don't know, like they've gone on holiday, and then I would go, oh, I did this, and then they'd be like, stop making everything about you. And I was like, no, I'm just trying to relate. Like that was it. That I remember that. But even younger, I was a chatterbox, interrupting, but also for me, it was very forgetful. So I lost everything, you know, and I was in trouble for it all the time. I forgot homework and never met deadlines. I was scatty, but likeable. And I think there was a period after being diagnosed with ADHD where that all fell into place. And I was like, oh, I'm not just a scatty idiot. Like I'm actually, there's just a different way my brain works. But also there was sort of real rage. There was some real anger because I suppose primary school, secondary school, you're kind of carried through a little bit. And so but when I got to university, that was when my ADHD and the effects of it actually started to have quite serious consequences because I just wasn't prepared or able for that level of self-management and keeping all those things on track and in order, and self-motivation, and not understanding that lack of ability to focus and sit down and get on with something wasn't just because I was lazy, but because my brain doesn't work like that. And there weren't any allowances made because they didn't know. And it really affected my university. You know, I scraped a 2-1, which is still great, but it should have been higher. And there is part of me that is still a bit resentful about that. But knowing now, it is such a gift because I have been able to accept those parts of me. Jimmy always says, my husband always says, you know that since you were diagnosed, you got worse. And I was like, I know. Because I kind of stopped masking and I kind of stopped pretending. And I was like, I don't have to be ashamed of this. This is just me. And I started on meds, and then I came off meds after a couple of years, and I'm still off meds, and I just love my brain now.
I love that. Do you know what? I love that. And I'm going to do that ADHD thing. I can resonate. Funnily enough, I didn't make it through I didn't make it through university. I got asked to leave. I didn't go to one lecture. I was so overwhelmed. I was like, what the fuck? And so I just didn't show up. And like you, I look back now, and actually, do you know what? Whether that was a good thing or a bad thing, it hasn't hindered me kind of in doing what I'm doing. But I do look back now, and it is that thing where I just wish somebody had understood. And I guess kind of like moving forward from that, I know I will come to all of these questions. I imagine that very much your journey played into what you've been really honest about. And I know, again, similar path. Sort of the addiction side that we both potentially have. And obviously that does manifest itself very much with people who have ADHD. It's a coping mechanism. We're searching, chasing dopamine. What hit can we get next? So I guess I'm going to sort of twofold this question into, you've done university, you've got Jimmy, you've got your kids. So Not So Smug came about, perhaps whilst also you were slightly masking some of the things that were driving you at the same time. Does that make sense? It's kind of like the showing up being raw and relatable, but equally we know that, again, like me, I guess, like not functioning alcoholic, but like the chasing the kind of thing, but still creating a platform. Let's go there a little bit with all of that.
Well, I mean, first of all, I definitely identify as an alcoholic. There's no doubt about that. And I would potentially have described myself as a functioning alcoholic. But now I know that the only time I'm a functioning alcoholic is when I'm in recovery. Like, as much as it looked like I was functioning, internally, I was absolutely not functioning, mentally not functioning. And a lot of that's to do with the privilege. You know, I had a lot of privilege that allowed me to continue to function outwardly. You know, I had support, I had family, I had money, I had friends, I had a job that was flexible, I had all of this, that, and the other. So, you know, in a lot of ways, as much as it looked functioning, it was actually, there's quite a lot of privilege involved in in what my addiction looked like. But I started Not So Smug Now in 2014, just after my eldest had been born. She's about 9 months old. And I was in the throes of postnatal depression. I didn't know it, hadn't been diagnosed, wasn't going to be diagnosed until she was a year old. But I was in the throes of postnatal depression. I felt incredibly lonely. My husband was touring. He'd been around for the first month and then was pretty much on tour for 7 months. I lived in London. All my family were in Yorkshire or Devon. I was completely on my own. And I had suffered with what I thought was depression on and off since I was 27. And actually what's interesting is with the ADHD diagnosis, my psychiatrist was like, I actually don't think you had depression because of the way it manifested, which was I would sort of have a breakdown, go onto antidepressants, come off 8 or 9, 10 months later, and then be fine for 2 or 3 years. He said, I think what you were suffering from was ADHD burnout. You know, you're masking so much that eventually you burn out. And so I was still doing that. I was still masking. I still wanted to be the perfect mum. I still couldn't be chaotic. I had to, you know, the effort that goes into appearing non-divergent is exhausting. And we do it because A, we don't know when you're a divergent, and B, because normal, for want of a better word, is what everybody expects of you. So, you know, I didn't feel like I could turn up with a baby bag that was falling out and 5 minutes late and this, that, and the other, because everybody was like, she'd be a mess. And it was really, really difficult. But it was that Not So Smug Now that really helped me through that. And it was a blog I wrote, first of all, that was like, I think that it was where I sort of said the phrase first, I just want to put her out by the bins. And obviously I did it in a joking way, but there was part of me that was like, really, I just want her to disappear. You know, I was so lost in my own... I was just so lost in my mental health. Like, I just didn't want to be there. And I wouldn't say that I thought about suicide, but I definitely would say that I didn't want to be around. I was like, I'm done. Can I just leave? You know, it was that. And so obviously you mentioned addiction. That kind of year, if you like, that first year, it's awful to say, but that first year of my eldest life was probably the worst of my life, you know. And I was struggling with postnatal depression. I was ADHD, undiagnosed, and I was slipping quite significantly into alcoholism and addiction. And through it all, as much as Not So Smug Now was always and is and will continue to be something to help other mums, I think honestly there was part of me where that was the only thing that really kept me going, like writing about it, because it was writing then at the time, you know, it wasn't just photos, it was an actual blog. And I think that's the thing that kept me going, in all honesty.
It's funny, isn't it, that how, for all the faults of, I mean, I know, like you're saying now, it's more social media, for all the faults and all the things that we criticise that for, I do think that for a lot of people, that way of releasing what you're going through can really help you. It holds you accountable. You're showing up for other people. And then as soon as you relate to other people, you're like I said in your introduction, it's like, oh, okay, it's not just me. And it's breaking down those conversations and listening to you there. You know, I think I say in my book, I wanted to sort of crash into a tree. I didn't want to die, but I wanted time to stop, because I think I didn't know how to stop it. You're just stuck, and it's going and it's going. And it's like, what do I need to do to just remove myself from this noise. It's that noise. And I know you talk about too the voices, the constant chatter. And if you don't have that person talking to you, we're not mad. There is nobody else in the room. When your head hits the pillow
and
at
we
night,
know there's nobody else in the room. That's
we know
the
there's
thing.
but it's like when your head when your head hits the pillow at night, it's still there. And then it's when I'm sleeping, I'm like, obviously I'm not like, wow, I'm sleeping, this is amazing, because my brain has stopped talking. But that's the only time the noise isn't there, is when I've gone to sleep. Other than that, there's very much that thing. And I think that that's what you have done with Not So Smug Now is whether it's because of ADHD or motherhood or menopause or whatever it is, I think a lot of us can relate to that chaos.
Yeah. And I think that's a reason. I think I heard a statistic and I can't remember, but it was a nurse who worked in addiction, and she said something like 85% of people she was in sort of a rehab, residential rehab. She said about 85% of people who come in are probably a neurodivergent in some way. And I think that that's really telling, because there is, alcohol helps you sort of just remove, like it just quietens the voices, honestly, quietens the noise in your head. But it also, for the longest time, alcohol did what I needed it to do, because with neurodivergence also comes like a lot of anxiety. And so there was a lot of social anxiety, and like, I'd been told all my life I made it all about me. So then I didn't really know how to have conversations. And alcohol fixed all those problems for a while. It made me sociable. It made me outgoing, made me confident. I could talk to boys. I could do all of this stuff. But it quickly stopped working for that. And in the end, I needed to make a decision. And it was actually once I decided to give up alcohol and to go into recovery that my therapist said, "Have you ever considered being diagnosed for ADHD?" And I was like, "Not really." And then I looked at the symptoms and I read them out to my husband. I didn't tell him what they were for. And I said, "Does this sound like..." He said, "That, whatever that is, that's what's fucking wrong with you." And I was like, "Okay, good to know." So yeah, it's weird. Like the worst time of my life, I suppose, brought me to a real period of self-awareness and understanding and growth, and so I'm always sort of weirdly grateful for that as well.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because I think, again, it's that sort of thing. My sober years allowed me to be present and actually face, I think, a lot of the traumas, a lot of the questions that I'd had about myself, and you can face them with clarity. And it's like you said, for you, the drinking was that thing. But I think the problem with alcohol is that for so many, it is that fix, like you said. And again, coming from that mummy wine culture, that again, 5 o'clock, everyone's like, "Oh, have you had your glass of wine?" Da, 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 da. And I know that people would do that, and they'd stop at 6 o'clock, but not me.
No. Also, people who like leave half a glass of wine on a dinner table, I'm like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "You haven't finished your wine." They'd be like, "Oh, I'm all right, thanks." I'd be like, "I'm sorry, what?" Like, it is unfathomable to me that is how some people are. I have one and I need 100.
Yeah.
And it's the same with me for everything. That this is why I know there's an ADHD link, because it isn't just alcohol. It's not just drugs.
Chocolate.
It's Kit Kats. If I cannot have one Kit Kat, I will have, if I buy, and I won't just buy one, I'll buy 2 Kit Kat chunkies. I have to put 2 dishwasher tablets in the dishwasher. Jimmy's like, "You only need 1. I'm like, "I think we need 2. Like, I always need more. I need to push it all the time. And knowing that I'm ADHD helps me manage that and accept it. Also knowing that I'm an addict helps me manage that and accept it. And so it's, I think it's a lot about just that self-awareness and understanding yourself that helped me find a peace around the chaos.
Yeah. I'm going to ask the question, sort of, again, my 2-pronged questions, which I seem to like. Like, what was not your rock bottom, but what was your moment where you were like, "I'm going to do this"? And obviously you spoke to Jimmy. What have you said to the girls? I guess kind of is something that I find really interesting, because definitely me stopping alcohol at a time when my children, I know yours are a bit younger, were about to start that journey. Definitely I hope has given them more of an awareness around alcohol. They aren't perfect, they do drink, but they do know now that they don't need to drink to have fun, which I think is something hopefully that they can carry forward with them. So yeah, what was that sort of moment. And I guess, yeah, I was going to tie it into sort of the perimenopause as well, but we'll kind of come, because I think the two are really interlinked. But what were the conversations you had with the girls and with Jimmy?
I mean, listen, I'll be honest, I probably always drank alcoholically. Like, I didn't drink addictively necessarily, but I always drank alcoholically. Like, I drank to get drunk, like, the whole time. And there were plenty of things throughout the many years of my drinking career that should have been rock bottom. You know, was even just little things, from like waking up at the end of the tube line on the last tube with no money and no phone battery. Like, that was jokes. Then a cat fell asleep on the tube again, a cat fell asleep on the night bus again, ended up in the bus terminal. That was jokes, but actually that's really dangerous. Like, if my kids told me that they'd fallen asleep and woken up in Stanmore or whatever without any phone, I'd be like, this is not all right. Like, there is a problem here. But obviously it's so normalised, those things, those rock bottoms that should have been were so normalised that I just thought it was, you know, another funny story. And actually, weirdly, what finally brought me into the room... sorry, can we edit that bit out and I'll start again?
Yeah.
Is that possible? Right. And actually what finally brought me into sobriety was a really high rock bottom comparatively. I was having these horrendous panic attacks at 4:00 every single morning. Thought I was dying. And I knew it was because I was drinking too much. I knew it was the booze. I knew, and it always had been. I'd always had this voice that was like, your drinking could be a problem. And I thought everybody had that voice. And it turns out, like, literally my mind was blown when somebody went, yeah, I don't ever worry about that. And I was like, oh, that's because you don't drink like an addict. She's like, I just have a glass of wine every now and again, never consider it a problem. And I was like, oh, right, so if I've got that voice, chances are I've probably got a problem.
I also don't
and
think,
it doesn't have to be...
just quickly, I also think a lot of people will admit that though as well, because I think that's you being totally honest and frank with yourself and having that, again, that's a real positive ADHD thing, because it's just blurted out and you've said it, you know. And that person that you might have been talking to, like, I know there are plenty of people kind of around me where I would look at their drinking habits now and think, but I might say that and they'll be, no, I'm fine, and I'm like,
yeah,
you know.
I mean, listen, I only ever talk about my experience and my feelings, and you know, there are definitely people who I know and love who I would look at and go, in my head, think, there's something going on there. But you know, actually, it's only a problem if it's a problem. I know people in recovery who drank far less than me but needed to come into recovery. I know people in recovery who drank far more than me. And I know people outside of, you know, who aren't sober, who drink way more and are fine. Yeah. You know, it is a personal thing. There isn't a level at which somebody goes, oh, you've hit this, now you're an alcoholic. Yeah. It's something that and that's why they say only you can decide, because it is something where you go, enough is enough. Yeah. And if you can't then stop, then that plus that equals you have a problem. Yeah. But it's not for me to decide. But I love, you did mention about whether I talk to my kids about it. I'm incredibly honest with the kids. They know that I am an addict, that I'm an alcoholic. They know that I am in recovery, that I don't do those things anymore. They understand what addiction is. They understand that it's also genetic. There is a genetic element to it, because they understand that they will have to be aware of the fact that they may have some of those tendencies. You know, one of my daughters is definitely neurodivergent. We're having her assessed at the moment, but I've got no doubt the other one possibly. But, you know, so her risk increases, and there's no shame. There is no shame surrounding addiction and alcoholism in our family. They have become very anti-alcohol. They are only like 8 and 10, so they're definitely probably going to change their minds. But my 10-year-old's like, I'm just going to be sober my whole life. I'm like, okay, well, I'll speak to you about that again when you're 15. But, you know, I'm never going to say they can't drink. I think they have to figure it out for themselves. But, you know, we've shared with them on a very appropriate level what the reality is. And, you know, they see me do what I need to do to be in recovery, and they get it. And it's honestly been, you know, nothing but a positive experience. I don't miss drinking. I don't miss, you know, the friends that I don't see as much anymore. I suppose one of my biggest worries about coming into recovery was the friends I would lose. And the reality is that the friends that you lose are the ones that you realise you weren't actually friends with anyway. Like, they were just drinking buddies. Yeah. And the friends that you keep are the ones you form really deep and much more honest relationships with them. So there is literally no downside to sobriety for me.
Yeah, I like that. And that's going to lead me on now, because obviously we're on like a menopause podcast. I'm going to bring us into that stage.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
Let's talk menopause.
What are we talking about? And so many women that I work with, that is the one thing that I really want to encourage them to do, because alcohol exacerbates pretty much every symptom of perimenopause. And actually, listening to you there say that at 4 a.m. you're waking up with those panic attacks, I'd be interested to know like what age that was, because again, not referring to the book, but I think my opening chapter was I thought I was dying. I'd said to my husband Jerry, if I don't wake up in the morning, tell them it was my heart. And on 3 or 4 occasions, I was ready to call an ambulance. Literally just this, heart palpitations, breathlessness, and then your mind just, that's it, you're gone. And I didn't realise, obviously, at that time, I was perimenopausal, but equally, bringing us back to that conversation, I would be there at night and I would feel the anxiety creeping up. So I'd have a glass of wine because I'd be like, it's okay, that's just going to switch off all that kind of anxiety. And it didn't. It just kept making it worse and worse. And so this is one of the things that I really want women who are coming into this next life stage is to understand that actually alcohol will exacerbate all of those symptoms that they're experiencing. But what is your journey so far with perimenopause? Where are you, do you think, with that? Let's go there.
Do you know, it's really interesting that you make that connection, because I haven't made that connection that those panic attacks were probably associated with perimenopause as well. I was 40 at the time. And looking back now, I can see that there was absolutely a huge increase in my anxiety levels. Now, up until this very moment, I have attributed that almost entirely to the fact that my addiction was getting worse. But actually, I think there might be something in the fact that, you know, perimenopause was starting, because it was also at the same time that I started to get really severe night sweats. And again, that was something that I sort of put down to drinking. But the night sweats didn't stop. My night sweats are 3 or 4 years now of not every night, but when they happen, Jimmy wakes up, he's like, oh, it's like waking up next to a soggy otter. And that's exactly what it is. I'm like slick with sweat, and I smell, and the sheets need, and it's horrible. So I haven't really put that connection together, but I do think for sure that, alcohol is never good for you. Like, it's never going to improve your health. No. The best you can hope for when you drink alcohol is that you hit, like, you zero out, right? You don't do any harm. That's it. But the chances are, if you're struggling with anything and you're drinking a lot, drinking less is definitely going to make you feel better. Yeah. That's, whether it's menopause or mental health or weight or psoriasis or whatever, it's never going to be helping. Yeah. I've never in my life met anybody who's given up booze and thought, well, I gave up booze and my life was rubbish. Nobody, not one person ever has ever said that to me. So it's almost like, if you're feeling the need to really hold on to that wine or hold on to that alcohol, then when you know that it's going to do you good to give it up, if you're struggling with menopause, then that's really a question that, like, I would want to be thinking about quite significantly. Like, why, if I know it's going to help me to not drink, can I not drink?
Yeah. No, I totally. And actually, those night sweats, that was one of the things I had. Yeah, like t-shirt changing night sweats was the way I would,
Oh, yeah.
I would have described that. And actually, it's interesting because I was 41. I think the other thing, again, just like with the perimenopause, and I think that, you know, perhaps it's that crescendo. So 41, you're saying you were 40 when you had that anxiety. You know, what we could cope with before, when we were in that full state of hormones, all the estrogen, all the progesterone, the testosterone, everything we needed, we were able to cope better. So obviously the way that happens with the menopause is those hormones are declining. We're still drinking. We've got ADHD. And that, I think, is where for so many women, it all kind of comes to that big overwhelm, and you've gone so deep. And I think that, you know, that this is why having these kind of conversations, and it's like, what can we do to help us navigate this life stage? Like, my number one thing before a woman goes to the doctor to get her HRT, I am pro HRT, I'm not anti HRT, would be to look at those lifestyle changes. So quitting alcohol, lifting weights, eating protein. And I know, like, again, those are the things that you have been trying to do. So I guess what I'd love to know is, A, are you still doing those things? How is that journey going? Obviously the alcohol, I know. And yeah, are you know, where are you with that? Like, where do you think you are with your perimenopause?
So I think I'm very early stages perimenopause. Night sweats are there in full flow. The other symptom that I really struggle with is normally around my period, I get extreme anxiety when I don't want to leave the house. I almost become like agoraphobic. And there have been times where I've been out in town or out with work or something, and I've had to call Jimmy and go, I'm not all right. Like, I need to come home. Like, this isn't okay. And I've realised it's because my period's either coming or I'm on my period, or what. And so that anxiety has been a real flag for me in terms of something has changed. The other thing is that my periods changed as well. So they became, well, various things happened, but essentially I ended up with a polyp, and my periods became very heavy and very sore, and a lot of it, and that was quite an interesting thing, because I was like, oh, well, maybe this is part of the perimenopause as well. And, you know, I think I could easily have ignored it and just gone, oh, well, my period's just changing because it's perimenopause, but actually that was something else. So it's hard navigating what you can attribute to perimenopause and what you can't, and like not ignoring some things that may need extra attention. And yeah, in terms, obviously there's no booze, there will never be any more booze, with some luck and a good wind. If there is, there's a problem. But yes, I try and eat more protein and I lift weights. My problem is still sugar addiction. I am 4 days into abstaining from refined sugar, and that's the first time I've managed 4 days in probably 3 years. So I'm hoping that, I know that needs to change, because now I eat sugar like I used to drink wine.
Yeah.
You know, like, and I with the same kind of addictive veracity. Like, I will suddenly decide that I need to Deliveroo a large bar of dairy milk, a packet of chocolate hobnobs, some red sugary laces, and a bag of fruit gums, and I'll sit down and eat every single last bit of that in one go, and then slip into some sort of hypoglycemic coma, and wake up feeling the same shame I felt waking up with a hangover. Like, it, you know, so I've really had to tackle that. And again, I think a lot of that is to do with these depleting hormones and the depleting energy and the way that my body changes. You know, certainly the way that I collect weight has definitely changed. It used to be very all over. Like, I used to be able to carry weight quite well. Now it's all around my middle. And the fact is that there is a significant change going on in my body, and I need to make adjustments to that. And
would you consider HRT?
Oh God, yeah, I'd love to, but I don't think I'm quite there yet. I mean, I know this isn't like a doctor's appointment, and I'm not like licensed. Do you think I'm ready?
Yeah. Do you know what? And it's interesting that I say that, because obviously I'm very much about the holistic changes. But I think the fact that you aren't drinking alcohol, you're doing your protein, you're lifting your weights, you're putting in, like, what I would say, all those lifestyle changes that someone needs to make. And again, like a lot of the doctors, and I'm not medically qualified, I will just caveat that now for anyone listening, but a lot of the doctors say, like, why wait until you feel even worse? Like, the one thing I think HRT helped me with was night sweats. So I have not had a night sweat since I started. I don't know that it helped me with much more. But again, like the other thing for you to consider is if we look back at our pasts, you know, our bone density reaches its maximum when it's 30, and our habits and lifestyle choices before our 30s play a significant impact on our bone density. So I have osteopenia in both my hips, and that's because I had anorexia, I drank, I smoked, I took drugs, I over-exercised. And those were all the questions they kind of ask you. I'm like, why are you asking me all of this? And obviously then there's a genetic, you know, disposition. Like my dad had hip fractures, and I think my granny had osteoporosis. But so HRT, therefore, for me, you know, they do say it's a very good treatment line for boosting, obviously, estrogen, which can help with your bone density. So like that's another reason why I would take HRT. But I would just say to you, like, don't do it now. But like if it carries on, go and talk to your GP and see what they want to do.
I think there's definitely a fear in me that the GP is going to roll his eyes and be annoyed. You know, I think there is that kind of, oh God, it's another woman coming to us. It's the Davina effect. You know, I've got a friend who's a GP. She's a woman, and I love her dearly. But she did sort of say, God, bloody Davina McCall's just made it a bloody nightmare for us all. And I get it. Like it's different. It's everybody's coming at it from different perspectives. Yeah. But I do think there is part of me that's a bit like, I just don't want to be sort of, you know, you're fine, I rolled out of the surgery. But it is definitely something that I'm going to do. I'm not like anti-HRT at all. I think it's a bit like antidepressants or, you know, whatever. It's like if you need it, take it.
I just don't want you to be afraid of doing that, because I think, you know, no, and that's it, right? None of us should have to suffer. And actually, even hearing you say that, like, I think it's brilliant that the celebrities have put menopause on the map, and we are making headway. I would like to see more chat around the holistic changes. I don't think we talk enough about the benefits of giving up alcohol, eating well, and exercise, because actually, who wants to do that? Why not do that quick fix? Society wants a quick fix, you know, take the pill, do whatever and be done with it. So, you know, I do think it's important to have those conversations, and I'm going to be pushing for that, well, as I do, even more so, and keep going. But don't be afraid. And like, I think somebody like you who, you know, is so honest and open, like, imagine, I just think of all the other women that then obviously might feel the same way, and that worries me.
Yeah, you know, and it sort of surprises myself, to be honest. I think it's because I haven't got to the point where I feel I really I'm compelled to go and do it. I've got no doubt that when I do feel that way, I will go. And but I do think you're right. Should maybe do it before. You know, why should I wait till I hit crisis point before I've got that support? So, yeah, you've given me something to think about, Kate.
See, this is like a therapy session as well as a podcast.
I know.
I love it. Now, I'm very aware of time, so I'm going to ask the question, because this is interesting. Now we've come to this point with you, but my last question is like, what would be the one thing you wish every woman knew before starting her perimenopause, which kind of ties in nicely to where we've just brought you to?
Yeah, I think, that it's a thing. Like, I honestly didn't know perimenopause was a thing. Like, you know, listen, we're so woefully uneducated. I didn't know until my 30s that the exterior part of my organs down there was called my vulva. I thought it was all my vagina.
Neither did I.
Yeah, so, I know I'm not the only one. I know for a fact I'm not the only one. Yeah. I didn't know perimenopause was a thing. I thought menopause happened when you were like 55 and that was it. No idea. So anybody who's in their 30s or, you know, and coming up to this period of their life, if there are changes happening or if you feel different, there is probably a reason for it, and it's not your fault. It's not like you're a horrible human being, or you know, defective in some way. I felt very defective for a long time. I was like, why doesn't my brain work properly? And, you know, anyway, but I also, you know, I cannot explain the difference that taking alcohol out of my life has done. And yes, of course, I'm an addict, so it was an extreme difference. You know, I went from, you know, massively binge drinking, massively binge using to a completely sober life. So of course there's going to be a significant difference. But even if you think you drink normally, or even if you like a party girl thing, you know, the impact of not having alcohol is so enormous. Like, it's so enormous to your mental health, to your energy, to your sleep. I thought adults just didn't sleep through the night anymore. Like, I just thought we didn't sleep through it anymore. Turns out we do. We just don't if we drink wine before we go to bed.
Yeah.
You know, I close my eyes at 10:30. They pop open at 6. Nothing in between. I mean, unless obviously I do have children, so they get in the way. But other than that, and it really is. You don't have to give it up forever, but even if you just go, right, over the next few months, 2-3 months, I'm just going to see. I think if you can do that, you'll realise that there's not much point in going back to it. And if you can't do that, you'll realise that you probably shouldn't go back to it.
Yeah. I think it's just giving yourself the opportunity, isn't it? Like, that is the one thing, is we've actually got a 12-day reset coming up. And all we're asking people is 12 days. And I know that a lot of people have reached out and they've gone, oh, 12 days, but I'm going on holiday. And it's like, the thing is, though, if you're going to quit, you're still going to go. You can't not go on holiday because you've given up. You know,
Christmas still happens. People still get married. I still have to go to weddings. I still have to go to birthday parties. I go to big events. I do not have the urge to drink or the need to drink, but I could never have believed that when I was still drinking.
Yeah.
Like, I never would have gone on holiday. Like, I would never have thought I could go on holiday and stay sober and not drink. What would be the point? And now I can't believe that I used to go on holiday and just be drunk through it.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a very precious thing, and I think to give someone, you know, every woman should give themselves the opportunity and the chance to experience that, especially if they've grown up in a culture where it's very, very accepted and very, very easy. You know, again, we're speaking from our own experiences, and not everyone maybe has the same tendencies. But thank you.
And I would also just say, sorry, Kate, I know you want to just get rid of me.
I don't want to get rid of you. I could sit here all day.
I know we've gone over. We've gone over, but I also want to say that now it's easier than ever to not drink.
That's a really
good point.
It
really is. It's cooler than ever. Like, I've really benefited from that. I've really benefited from that Gen Z lot going, what are millennials doing? Just being drunk all the time. It's really embarrassing. Non-alcoholic options are incredible, and it really is easier than ever to be sober. It's far less stigmatized. You know, if people sort of go, why aren't you drinking? I mean, I just go because I'm an alcoholic, but you just be like, why are you drinking? You know, like...
I mean, God, you know what? You've just reminded me. Don't you remember, like, when you were pregnant and you didn't want to tell anyone, and people be like, why aren't you drinking? Oh, I'm antibiotics, I've got thrush, or something, like, really, because you were so embarrassed to say that you weren't drinking. You know, like,
honestly, it is baffling, and you know, people do always ask you why you don't drink, and I know there's a lot. You can say it's the only drug that you're forced to kind of explain why you don't use. Like, I get it. I don't blame people. We have grown up thinking, our whole society is, it's weird if you don't drink.
Yeah.
And yet, when we're ill, we don't go, oh, I'm not. I mean, I didn't, because I was an addict. I still drank when I was ill. I was like, oh, a glass of wine will help me.
Yeah.
No, it absolutely will not. You know, but we do have this association that it's doing us good. And if you are perimenopausal, for sure, just give yourself that chance to see. I would say try do 30 days, because that's how you start to really feel the benefits. But it's an incredible gift, and it's easy. It's the easiest thing I've ever done that's made the biggest change.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. I could carry on talking to you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks
really
for asking me. Me too.
And
do you know, at the beginning when you were like, it's 35, 40 minutes, I was like, yeah, whatever.
4 hours later, we're still talking. But that was always going to happen. And do you know what? I'm really proud of us, because actually we did stay on track as well. We didn't like just totally dive out and talk about something else.
I know, too. ADHDers focused. It's never happened.
I'm going to have to go
and it's documented.
Yeah.
I know, I do feel a bit tired.
I'm going to lie down for the rest of the day. Thank you. If you don't follow Kat, which I'm sure most of you do, Kat, can you just give us your handles?
Of course, it's at Not So Smug Now on Instagram and TikTok. I've got a Substack, which is You're Never the Only One, just notsosmugnow.com if you want to get involved and find out a bit more.
Just quickly, you did, and I hope you'll do them again. Those amazing quizzes that you do, because we did one. We did the last Christmas quiz. They're so good. Because can you tell? ADHD person, what the fuck do I do at Christmas? How do I entertain everybody? Okay, I know. Kat's got the answer. And literally, I was so excited about it. And the kids really enjoyed it.
No, well, it's brilliant because it helps you out when you haven't got anything planned, and I can get into like hyper focus on it. So it's brilliant. But yeah, I do quizzes at Christmas time. I did them. They started off during the pandemic, and then we sort of whittled it down to just Christmas. And so I do a Christmas quiz every year, and it's honestly one of my favourite things to do. So come December the 1st, hopefully it will be there and available for sale.
Yeah, I've given you something to do now. Also, actually, another thing, just quickly, see, I knew this was going to happen.
Another thing.
Could you just do summer one too? Because I know we didn't get round to that, because we are recording this just after the summer holidays. My summer holiday was about 8 weeks too long. I love my children. But if you could do maybe like over the summer, do like a weekly quiz. That'd be good.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Like something to keep them busy.
I'm sure my kids will occupy themselves while I do a quiz for your kids. I'm sure.
No, for everybody. It's long.
Yeah, it is long. It really is long. Mine were back yesterday, and there is just this sort of sense of calm in the house that hasn't been around. I did more yesterday than I did the whole summer, basically. I achieved more. I love them though, little rat bags. Yeah,
it's hard. Maybe we'll save that for the next podcast. We'll talk about a bit more about the parenting side of things, because I know that, again, when women are navigating this life stage, all sorts of questions pop up. Am I a bad parent? Have I added some of the faults that, I had, and added some extras? Philip Larkin, she says.
Well, and also I think that because a lot of us are having children later, like a lot of us are having children in our 30s, whereas before people tend to have them earlier in their 20s. We are going through I think we're also going through perimenopause a little bit earlier. I think our kids are hitting puberty earlier. I think we're going through menopause a little bit earlier, but it means that we are going through menopause when our kids are still very young, often, and that is a whole that is a real game changer, and I think that can affect your parenting in a way that we take for granted, because having to deal with small children and the perimenopause is definitely going to be difficult.
But also like young adults. So what am I? I'm 48. I had Rupert when I was 40. I've got Ollie who's 18 and Sophie who's 16, and so it's like letting them go as well at the same time as my hormones are going everywhere, and someone driving and not sleeping because someone's driving, or then when he takes all the children out in the car, you're like, oh god, it doesn't, and then you're caring for elderly or sick parents. We are in the eye of the storm. A lot. Yeah. See, we did another 10 minutes. I love it.
I know.
Okay, I'm going to let you go.
I'm going for a nap.
Yeah, go for a nap. Thank you. Love you.
I won't go. Love you too. Thank you so much for asking me.
Thanks. Sorry, Kate.